Hi, I'm Mike Duggan. I've been teaching restorative dentistry for over 32 years now and to over 6,000 dentists. This video shows how I do it. Real-time, mannequin-based, hands-on, point of view, and patient real. If you are a pre-dental student, an aspiring teacher, an international dentist, join me at Duggan Oral Design, DugganOralDesign.com. Okay, how's A coming along? Oh, looks like it has a nice shape. Let's see how it fits the opposing tooth. Okay, not bad. So I like your shape a lot. You just don't have the clearance yet. I like the vertical angle a lot. But again, you just need to get more clearance. So the burr that you're using, that should fit everywhere, all the way along here. So it's not fitting anywhere yet. So keep doing more of the same thing. You'll be good. All right. Okay, you may be too horizontal. So we'll check. Yeah, this definitely looks like it's too horizontal. Your grooves are in about the right place. You don't quite have enough clearance yet. This is sort of a strange direction.
Okay.
So maybe about this position, this direction, and that angle.
Okay.
And then over here, about that position. But, you know, get more vertical angle.
Okay.
So now you see the angle's a little bit better. We'll get the position a little better right here. Okay, so you're getting close.
Okay.
So for some reason it's not quite, you have to squeeze it down a little bit to get the occlusion on both sides.
Yeah.
Make sure you squeeze it completely and then you can check to make sure the burr fits. There's almost enough clearance there yet.
Okay.
Okay, and then you can start into B plane after that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sure. Okay. So you're probably a little bit too steep, too vertical, but we'll see. Yeah, a little more vertical than it needs to be. So toward the top of the cusp, you're having trouble getting the clearance. You've got clearance toward this area out here, but you don't have so much clearance at the top because it's too vertical. So let's just change the angle a little bit and make a little more definite groove here. Yeah, and then again with the vertical angle makes a big difference. And then come all the way around into here. So here, into this groove, from this groove into this groove, and then from this groove up to the embrasure there. Okay, so it looks pretty good now. Probably need to get a little more clearance right up in this area. But otherwise, pretty good. Now your B plane. So you don't have quite enough clearance here yet. Yeah, the mesial buccal. And I would probably have the ridge a little bit more toward the mesial side. Reduce the marginal ridge a little bit more. So a flat plane all the way down to the marginal ridge, and then a nice long flat plane down here. And don't forget to bring the end of the burr out that groove. Okay, so now I got plenty of clearance there. So yeah, this is the direction for the burr on the B plane here.
Oh.
So not this way, but way over here like this. Again, tangent to the corner, toward the center, then make all three planes. Okay. All right, coming along though. Cool. Okay, so we're going to get the patient back in the reclined position, so they're going to be enjoying their experience today. Right? You can do everything in this position and this evaluate by looking in the mirror up this way. Okay. All right, so pretty close. You got the right idea. So maybe not quite enough clearance here. You have almost enough over here, not quite enough over there, not quite enough up here. The grooves are defined reasonably well. The positions are not too far off. This is a little bit too horizontal. So a little more vertical when you're making the entire plane. And it's going to fit the opposing tooth a little better. Okay, so now we're getting some pretty good clearance. Okay, now on the B plane, this ridge, you have it kind of going like this way. It should be going about like that. But reduce the center groove. You're a little bit too horizontal there. So make sure you reduce the center groove. Make sure you reduce all the way to the marginal ridge here. Then come down here, and then bring the burr out the facial groove. So we got plenty of clearance there now. Then when we're doing the distal buckle, point the burr this direction, tangent to the corner of the adjacent tooth toward the center. You're tending to be more like this, so a little bit more of an angle. Then come out the facial groove, then down to the distal facial groove, down the distal cusp. But follow the center groove when you're doing that, and double check the clearance. If you have enough, then you can move on to the C plane. That'll be pretty good. Sure. Okay, your poor A plane, it's not there. So the A plane's angled this way. So if you look at the opposing tooth, you have no clearance at all yet. See over there?
Yes.
You have no clearance yet at all. And that's because you didn't do the A plane. Okay, so we really do start with that. That's the key to the whole thing. Make a couple of grooves. The A plane has this angle, right? Okay. So you're treating it like you're doing a Schillingberg type prep. So let's get the A plane done so we can see how much clearance we have on the B plane and everything else. And now we're starting to get some clearance. You see that?
Yeah.
So we start with the A plane until you get the A plane looking beautiful, like it's really matching the opposing tooth perfectly. Don't do anything else. Okay, so now we're getting grooves in about the right position. I'd probably move this one a little bit more distally. If you look at the monitor, you see what I'm showing you.
Yeah.
Let's move that a little bit more distally, get a little more clearance up in this area. But this is all the A plane. Now, what you did is you did the B plane. That's all you did so far. And so, but you couldn't see what you were doing because you didn't have the space to look through like we do now.
Nope.
So a little more clearance on the mesial buckle right here. Don't have the burr going facial lingually, have it going a little bit of an angle. And try not to reduce, you reduce to the adjacent tooth, but don't reduce the adjacent tooth. This ridge should be pointing this direction. See, look in there, we're looking as close as I can down the axis so I can see the burr's tangent to the corner of the adjacent tooth toward the center. That's the direction of that ridge. You can always look at my typodont and make sure you see the right direction there. So 3 planes, 1 out the facial groove, 2 to the distal facial groove, 3 down the distal cusp. Okay, and then check both of those planes for clearance with your bulb burnisher, then you can proceed to the C plane. Okay? Don't forget A. Okay. There's A.
I only did the air. I still don't think I have enough clearance. Maybe a little bit.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can figure out what the problem is. Yeah, so the A plane looks a little bit vertical.
Okay.
So it looks like you're a little too steep. So this facial margin got pretty low. So in the facial side of the A plane, of course, you got tons of clearance because it's not really where the opposing tooth is, but up toward the cusp is where you're not getting enough clearance. Okay, so a little more horizontal, and there's well-defined grooves and then rounded cusps. Just rounded between these grooves, rounded between the groove and the embrasure. But watch the vertical angle. Try to make sure you have an angle So look in the monitor. Make the angle match the opposing tooth. Don't make it any steeper than you need to.
When you say opposing tooth, can you show that?
Here's the opposing tooth right here. Here's the triangular ridge on the opposing tooth. So make that angle on your prep as much as you can.
Yeah. Got it.
Okay, and then I could get a little more clearance on the distal side of that groove. A little more clearance on the top of this cusp right over here. So yeah, just take your time. So groove, embrasure, groove to groove, groove to embrasure. And then keep working on it until it's showing you some clearance, some uniform clearance. Now you can go ahead and do the B plane.
Okay.
And get that ridge in just the right direction there. Okay? All right. Coming along. Okay. All right. She's done it all.
Yeah,
We're going to change a few directions here, but okay. So over here, now see, you don't have enough clearance yet, and you're making a ridge on the A plane where there are no ridges on the A plane. There are grooves, well-defined grooves, but rounded ridges.
Okay.
So groove here, in between.
It should be
It's
rounded.
rounded. Yeah, that's going to fit the opposing tooth best if you do it that way. Get the vertical angle, make really nice grooves exactly where they should be. Keep everything rounded in between. So see how it fits the opposing tooth now?
Yeah.
Now you got a little bit too much clearance on the mesial-buccal part of the B plane, but on the distal-buccal part, you don't have practically any clearance at all. So, you know, this part, basically, okay, don't forget to bring the burr down and don't forget to bring the burr out the facial groove.
Okay.
So you got a flat plane all the way out that groove. Now this ridge doesn't point this direction, it points this direction.
Okay, towards the center tooth.
Yeah, tangent to the corner of the adjacent tooth toward the center. Then bring the burr out the facial groove. Then down to the distal facial groove. And then down the distal cuff. So that's plane 1, plane 2, plane 3.
Okay.
And then you can check your clearance, and we might still need a little bit more, but we're getting close. Okay, so now this part right here, okay, it might be pretty reasonable. It might have to be shifted distally. We don't know. We'll have to check with the bite registration material. I didn't say it in the demonstration part, but after you get the clearance that you want on the distal lingual cusp,
Okay.
try to make the mesiolingual cusp about the same height.
Okay.
Then that usually means you've reduced it enough. Okay? Okay, anyway, you're coming along, and since you're a little bit ahead, you could go ahead and start doing some maxillary reduction if you wanted to.
Okay.
Why not? Okay. Okay, so your A plane's probably a little too vertical. So let's take a look though. We want the A plane to be this angle. Whoops. We want the A plane to be about this angle here. So yeah, part of it's a little bit too vertical, especially toward the distal side. Okay. So, and again, the position of these grooves is all important. So make a really nice groove. Really nice groove. Check to see the location. Make sure it's exactly the right location. So those are better positions. Now, you got plenty of clearance here, but we will sort of get the shape a little bit better from here, around into here, and then over here. And then from here, around the corner of the embrasure here. So well-defined grooves, rounded cusps. Then we'll see how it fits. I got a little more clearance than you need in some places, but now it at least fits the opposing tooth a little bit better. Okay, you have to squeeze your typo knot down until it
Yes.
slides over there. But anyway, now the A plane looks decent. The B plane, okay, so you got plenty of clearance over here at this point, but you haven't even reduced it all that much yet, but you still got plenty of clearance, so, but reduce the central groove. So make this plane more vertical.
Okay.
Reduce the central groove. Don't forget to bring the end of the burr out the facial groove. So down here to the marginal ridge, and then down here and out the facial groove. This ridge should be pointing this direction. Not this way, but this way. So tangent to the corner of the adjacent tooth toward the center. Don't forget to make the central groove. Get it deeper. Get the burr more vertical. You can match the vertical angle to the adjacent tooth. But keep it pointing in the right direction. Out the facial groove and then down here to the distal facial groove. And then down the distal cusp. Get that position, get that direction. Then you keep reducing it until you get the clearance. Check the clearance with the ball burnisher. Okay, and then you can start do the C plane over here. Okay. Again, one plane here, bring the end of the burr out the lingual groove, another plane down here right up against the adjacent tooth, and adjust it until you can check with the bite registration material. Okay? Cool. Zananchi, yeah, you can get the impression gun and one of the mixing tips up there too whenever you want to check the distal lingual. All right?
Should I check first and then start with the registration?
Yeah, check that first. Yep. Okay. Okay, so the A plane looks pretty good. Don't think you have enough clearance on the B plane on the distal buckle, right in here. So if I close the typo knot down and I try to get the ball burnisher through, it's not fitting there. Okay, so that's how you have to check it. Okay, so the number one thing to get the right clearance there is to get the right anatomy. The right anatomy is pointing the burr even more toward the distal like this. So again, tangent to the corner of the adjacent tooth toward the middle. That's the direction of that ridge. Make a nice facial groove coming out this way. Nice flat plane coming down here. Nice flat plane coming down the distal cusp. Over here, you're going to make a flat plane down to the marginal ridge. Only cut one direction, and away from the ridge, and then out the groove there. So now we're getting a little more clearance here, but I think you need to do more. So keep doing more and keep checking with the ball burnisher until you know that you have the right clearance. On the C plane, again, make flat planes, and it's going to be easier if you make a nice groove coming out the lingual. Come all the way down here, out that groove. Come all the way down here. That's how you get the ridge, is to make two nice flat planes. And then you can do the same thing over here and make sure you get the reduction that you need on that cusp. Okay, so keep working on that, and we'll start on the upper one pretty soon. Okay? But if you have some time, you can start on the facial reduction or the lingual reduction on this one as well. Okay. Your B plane looks a little horizontal, and everybody gets the ridge in the wrong direction. So you're okay here, but over here your ridge is this way. It should be more like this, and a little more vertical. So get the angle pointing into the center of the tooth a little bit more. And make these three planes very definite. 1, 2, 3. And then check your clearance. It looks like you have enough clearance, but take the ball burnisher and check it.
Okay.
And then you're okay here, but you know we're going to follow the central groove now, and then don't forget to bring the end of the burr out the lingual groove. There we go. Yeah, I'll just put it on the table here. So come out the lingual groove and then come down here to the marginal ridge. This looks good. And then come down here. Okay, so we definitely have the clearance there. Check with the bite registration material. Make sure you have enough clearance on that one.
Yeah.
But we're almost there.
Right.
Then you can start doing some facial angle reduction with the chamfer burr.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so your A plane looks pretty good. B plane, yeah, you're a little too horizontal. This is what typically happens. People get too horizontal when they're doing the B plane, and if you point the burr in the right direction, like this, it's easier to get the right vertical angle too, but we always compare it to the adjacent tooth here. Vertical angle, get the direction this way. Then make those 3 planes. 1, 2, 3. That's how you're going to get clearance the most easily. And then make sure you make a very well-defined ridge, and then make sure it's in the right position by using the indirect method to check it. Bring the end of the burr out the lingual groove right here, and then when you're coming down this way, bring it out the same groove. You don't need to make 2 separate lingual grooves. Just down here, out the groove. Down here, out the groove. Down here to the marginal ridge. Down here to the marginal ridge. Okay? And then check those with the bite registration material to make sure you have the clearance that you need. Okay, so we're pretty close. So before we start talking about the upper arch, you can start to do some axis reduction too. But check with the bite registration material. Well, you did a little bit already, didn't you?
Yeah.
What did it tell you?
Distal lingual cusp is high.
This
So
right over here?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just reduced it even a little bit more, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, the better you define the ridge, the easier it is to see in there. And you can even mark it with pencil, and the pencil will give you some orientation on that. Okay? Cool. Okay. Okay, so you started your facial reduction. Your occlusal reduction looks like it's probably working out all right. So you check the distal lingual with the bite registration material. Okay. So is this the most recent one you did? So what I have to do is I have to turn off my light so I'm not lighting it from both sides at the same time. Okay, that looks like it's probably the distal lingual ridge.
Yeah, I thought it would go with the proximal reduction.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, so where it's thin, it's mostly because you don't have the distal lingual ridge pointing in the right direction. But let's take a look at it. You have it pointing too much toward the middle of the tooth. So typically it needs to be about like this direction in this position. So it's in this area where you're not getting enough clearance. So change the direction of the ridge and the position a little bit, and you can get it to work out a little bit better. So you're close on this direction here, but it's probably shifted mesially a little bit. You go right toward the center. So don't forget to bring the end of the burr out the facial groove here. And over here, you're a little bit too much toward the center. Put it about like this. Keep it a little bit more on the mesial side. And again, come out the facial groove. And don't forget to reduce as close as you can to the adjacent tooth. You haven't reduced this cusp much. Let's really get that cusp reduced a full millimeter. And then have it meet this one in a V shape. So that's probably pretty good. And again, plane 1, plane 2. Don't forget to do plane 3 down the distal cusp. All right, so you're starting the facial reduction. But you're making a chamfer without getting the taper. So look along the arch, lean the burr toward the axis. Then you can do your chamfer, okay? Use your taper and reduce until you get the margin you want at the bottom. That's what we always do. There's a more reasonable taper. So again, we're looking along the arch, so you can see the taper on the lingual, you can see the taper on the buccal, but see, this is what you did.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a PFM, you're going to take the angle from the middle third here, where you're going to do the same thing for the gold crown. Take the angle from the middle third. There's your taper for 2/3 of that wall. This taper right here, but not like that. Okay? All right, cool. Okay, well, let's take a look at it. Okay. All right. So we got that A-plane done. That's quite an interesting mirror, huh? A lot of character to it. Okay, so it's pretty clear you have enough occlusal clearance. The ridges aren't necessarily optimum for getting that clearance. This ridge especially, you want to make sure it's pointing very much diagonally. You're a little bit too much facial lingually. And then come right out that facial groove and then come down here. So plane 1 out the facial groove, plane 2 down to the distal facial groove, plane 3 down the distal cusp. 1, 2, 3. That'll give you the easiest chance to get clearance. This ridge I'd probably shift it a little bit more to the mesial. Keep it just 1/4 of the way across the surface. And this isn't too unreasonable here. Now, you're going to bevel after you do the lingual reduction, right? You haven't got anything to bevel yet if you don't have a margin or a cusp ridge. So yeah, flat plane here out the groove, flat plane here to the marginal ridge. So make sure you get the clearance. So you have some material right here.
So actually, I put the cusp towards the distal side because of the occlusion. The
Okay.
facial cusp.
Yeah, you didn't blow the dust off of the tooth.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of dust in the
No, actually
material.
that dropped. The material dropped from my hand onto the floor.
Okay, well that would be a problem too, but there's some, it looks like dust that's sort of embedded in it. And I think that's the distal lingual over here. But, you know, I would have to turn my light off a little bit more, but I think your clearance is probably okay. So take it out of the typodont and check it directly, just so you have the learning experience that way. That'll be good. Okay, now you can start doing some facial lingual axis reduction. Okay?
What about mesiolingual?
In terms of the amount of reduction?
Yeah.
Okay, well the way we evaluate that is we get the clearance on the distal lingual. So get the clearance on the distal lingual, and then when you have the distal lingual exactly the way you want, try to make this height of the mesiolingual cusp about the same height as the distal lingual. So you could probably reduce some more off that cusp tip there. That would be okay. But that's a good question. All right. Okay, so your B plane is too horizontal.
Again. Okay.
Yep.
But I matched it with, like, I tried.
Well, let's take a look. Let's look on the monitor so we can match it together. So see how horizontal it is here? Now the adjacent tooth is like this, and you're like this. Adjacent tooth is like this, and you're like this. And the directions also are a problem. So this probably should be about here and going in this direction, in this position. But again, get it more vertical so you're actually reducing the central groove and defining the central groove. And then over here it's going to go this direction.
Okay.
So you have it running facial lingually, but it should be, 45 degrees different from that. And then start in this pit and come out the facial groove, then come down to the distal facial groove. That's how we get the clearance and yet have it fit the opposing tooth as well as we can. Getting the clearance without having to do too much reduction. But keeping the vertical angle under control is a big help. And then a little more vertical even in over here. And don't forget to bring the end of the burr out the lingual groove. And then down here. So 2 different planes. This way down to the marginal ridge, this way, and out the lingual groove. Okay, so some of those areas are pretty much over-reduced. Some are basically okay. But that's the basic idea. So see if you can do some axial reduction on the facial and the lingual.
Okay, doctor. So in this, the mesiobuccal cusp, is it like, should it be more distal or should it be, is it fine?
Well, we're not usually worried about that too much. We're worried about where the grooves are.
Okay, yeah.
On the A plane, we're worried about the grooves here and here. Make sure those fit the opposing cusps.
Okay.
Otherwise, just keep it nice and rounded and just check your clearance.
So this should be fine.
The only anatomy on the A plane you need to worry about is the grooves.
Okay.
Okay? Now on the B plane, we're getting those ridges and just keep them a quarter of the way across the surface and then you're probably going to be fine. Keep the vertical angle right and then the facial lingually, the cusp is going to be in the right position. Okay? Vertical angles. Okay? Cool. Okay.
I'm not able to see the distal lingual.
Ah, okay. Well, on each quadrant, that's something you have to figure out. Okay, so let's see here. There we go. So we did the occlusal reduction already, so we're pretty content with that. So now the facial reduction, we're looking along the arch this way, so I would probably taper a little bit more, but you're pretty close. Lingually, I would taper more. You know, the lingual wall leans outward, so we're going to make sure we get some axial taper when we do the prep.
So do I need to angle my tooth bar towards the
Toward the axis. So a couple degrees toward the axis. Then you can come around like this. On the facial, I'd probably go a little bit more taper like that. Take the secondary plane from the adjacent tooth this way. You're going to bevel over here. Now, when we come around the corners on the lingual, we're going to look this way.
Okay, from the opposite side.
Yeah, and then you can see across the arch. So look all the way across the arch, and then we can come into the embrasure. Do the same thing over here. Okay? So on the patient, you'd be retracting the cheek quite a bit. And then from the facial, you can come around the corner looking this way.
Okay.
Okay, because the assistant's sitting over on the other side. And then you can go through the entire contact with the 877 burr looking this way. On the lower right, we're going to be looking from the lingual. You can look along the proximal surfaces the same way.
Okay.
Right? You're sort of looking at it upside down.
We have to turn the patient towards the left.
Yeah, we'd go ahead and for the buccal side on number 30, look this way, and then you can come into the embrasures this way. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, so each quadrant, it's a different position, but each quadrant, each part of the tooth, we have to see the same thing. The axial taper, gingival position, axial reduction. As long as you see those, you're cool. Okay. Okay, so you're making depth cuts, but we're not doing a PFM. You're making your depth cuts on the facial, but for a full gold crown, just reduce it. Just get the chamfer and start reducing. So again, when you're doing the PFM, we're making a 1 millimeter shoulder. We don't necessarily have a burr that does that all by itself, so we make the depth cuts, we break it up into steps. But for any time we're doing just a 0.5 millimeter chamfer, just look along the wall and reduce at the taper you want until you get a chamfer. Then you're all set. So you've already over reduced. So it's like you're trying to make a PFM here. Okay, so the depth cuts are deep like for a PFM. Now they're pretty far from the gingiva, so they might disappear when you do the axial reduction.
Okay.
So just with the chamfer burr, so we'll see. Let's check your occlusal. Yeah, part of the occlusal you don't have enough clearance. And in fact, right here, See, you didn't really reduce the central groove.
Okay.
So when you're doing this plane right here, we can make sure we come out the facial groove from the central groove, then come down this way.
Okay.
Get the central groove in the right place, reduce it down here, but you have the burr pointing in the right direction. That's cool. But then when you're doing this part right here, keep the end of the burr in the same groove. And come down this way, and then out the lingual groove, and then come down this way to the marginal ridge.
Okay.
So you were making like two central grooves, and between them there was this big bump, and that bump was too close to the opposing teeth. Okay, but now it's working out. Now we're getting the clearance that we need. Okay, so for a full gold crown, we just use a chamfer burr for the rest of it.
Okay.
Either the 878K014 or the 877. So I'll just go to 877. Now, for the facial lingual, you can use the bigger burr. That's fine. But, you know, we can also use a smaller burr. Just lean the burr toward the axis and reduce until you get a chamfer. So choose your taper matching the middle third of the adjacent tooth. So I'm going to drop gingerly and make a nice 1/2 millimeter chamfer.
Okay.
Again, if the end of the burr is at the margin, I've got the perfect margin. And then when I want to come into the embrasures more, I'll look this direction. So I can see along the wall as I'm coming around the corner. And now I can look along the wall. We have to see along the wall. So now I can come through here. I can go as deep gingerly as I need to get past the adjacent tooth.
Okay.
But again, I'm just making sure I see the end of the burr at the margin. So I can go all the way through like that. And I can also do the same thing looking from the lingual. I can look along the wall this way from both of these sides, right? Okay, so
That completely performance.
yeah, and it's really you've got to see what you need to see. So you've got to be looking along the wall so you can see everything. And in every part of every tooth and every quadrant, there's a different position to be in to see along the wall there. Then you're in control. So now we have a nice uniform chamfer coming all the way around there. And the nice thing is your depth cuts disappeared. Cool, huh? All right, so do some more chamfer.
Thank you so much.
All right. So here's the prep. If you put a pencil, if you make a pencil mark on the tooth, you can usually identify which is the distal lingual cusp. So it's likely to be this one right here. And so if I look this way, no, it's probably this one over here. So a lot of times, yeah, this is the distal side. You've reduced more of the distal cusp than I was expecting. But anyway, so this is the distal lingual ridge right here. So let's look. So it looks pretty light here on both sides of that ridge. So I suspect we should reduce both sides equally,
Okay.
but especially toward the central groove on the mesial side of that ridge.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got the basic form just fine, but now I'd probably reduce more right in here, and reduce more down here. Let's get some more color in that registration material, okay?
Okay.
Okay, and why are you making depth cuts?
I was gonna start with the axial reduction.
I know, but why are you making depth cuts? We're not doing a PFM.
Okay, so just start reducing.
It's a full gold crown. Just take a chamfer burr and start reducing until you get a chamfer,
Okay.
right? Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
So ignore those, and when you do the face reduction, you know, make sure you get the margin close to the gingiva, and maybe those depth cuts will go away.
Yeah.
All right. Oops. Okay. Do a little axial reduction.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look. So when we do the facial and the lingual, we're going to look along the arch, of course. We have to look along the wall. So I can look this way. So your taper is pretty good. You know, match the middle third of the adjacent tooth just like you do for PFMs. and but you're not quite getting the chamfer. So make sure you reduce until you see the end of the burr at the surface of the tooth, at the margin. Now when you want to come around into the embrasure here, now we turn and look this way. Now I can see along the wall here. You always have to see along the wall. And then we can use the 877 burr and go all the way through that contact whenever we want. But see, now we're getting a little more uniform chamfer and taper all the way around this corner. So see what you can do to make it more uniform here. See, over here on the distal you have no chamfer. So choose your taper and reduce until you get a chamfer, and then you can go to the next part. All right? Coming along. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so it looks to me like you have the occlusal reduction working out pretty well. We would like to define the ridges really nicely. So we're not trying to like round them over or smooth them out. So only cut one direction down here and then cut one direction down here. So make a nicely defined ridge.
Do we want them to be as sharp as before?
Well, that's not sharp. It's just well defined.
Okay, right.
The lingual cusp, that's sharp. That's the rule of thumb, remember? So we just want to have nice flat planes and well-defined ridges. It's easier to see, easier to check your clearance if these ridges are as well-defined as possible. So get in the habit of cutting down from this ridge, down from this ridge, out the facial groove here, down from this ridge here, and then down here with the burr pointing this direction. Okay, so that's coming along. Now when you want to do the facial reduction, we're going to look this way and take the taper from the middle third of the adjacent tooth. Make sure you choose your taper first and then just reduce until you get a chamfer. That's all we have to do. And now when you want to come into the embrasure a little bit, switch your position around like this, and then we can come around into the embrasure. Again, I'm looking along the wall so I can see the chamfer and the taper in the jingle position. So we have to figure out which direction to look when we're doing the chamfer in each part of the tooth. And there'll be like several different directions that we have to look in, but when we're doing the coming into the proximal from the facial, look this way. When you're coming, sorry,
I'm so sorry.
that's okay. When you're coming into the proximal from the lingual, look this way. Okay. When you're doing the direct lingual, look this way. So again, we're always looking along the wall that we're cutting. Okay. As long as you do that, then you'll have total control over those reductions. Okay? All right, keep working on that. Okay, we got some chamfer. So let's check your taper. So we can take the taper from the middle third of the adjacent tooth like this. So I would probably want to taper a little bit more.
Okay.
And you're letting the end of your burr get a little bit inside the tooth. It should have been right there at the margin, and you're letting it get a little bit inside. So let's use this taper and recut that, and I'll do it until I see the end of the burr right at the margin. So I'm choosing the taper and I reduce until the end of the burr gets to the surface of the tooth exactly where I want it. And now we have a little bit more uniform and a little smaller chamfer in that area.
Do we have to check it from the tooth mesial to it or distal to it?
Check
or
what?
Or the taper?
Either one. It all depends. If the patient's got a lot of malalignment, then you have to decide.
Yeah.
But, you know, in a typodont like this, where the alignment's pretty good, then they should be, the middle thirds should be the same.
Okay.
Okay? All right, and then when you're doing the lingual, you look along the arch this way. Now, when you're coming around the corners into the embrasures, we're going to look perpendicular to the arch like this. And then bring the burr around the corner like this. But I can see along the wall, so I can see the taper and see the gingival position and see the size of the chamfer all the way around while I'm doing it. And over here, I'll do the same thing over here. So again, note the position I'm in, note what I see, because that's what you have to see too. Okay, so refine that facial wall, and then you can start doing the lingual. Make sure in the lingual that you lean the burr toward the axis. Ignore the original contours. Lean the burr toward the axis.
Toward the axis.
Yep, just a few degrees toward the axis.
Ignore the lingual tilt of the burr and do it towards the
Yeah, the lingual tilt of the tooth.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so let's take a look here.
Ski jump.
Ski jump, oh. Yeah. So how do you get rid of a ski jump? We're going to prep it again, but make sure the end of the burr stays at the surface. If we always have the end of the burr at the margin or at the surface, it's impossible to get a ski jump. But that's how you have to fix it if you get one. So lean the burr a little more axially, parallel to the middle third of the adjacent tooth. When you start leaning the burr outward, the end of the burr starts to come inside. That's how you get ski jumps. So choose your taper wisely first, and then reduce until you see the end of the burr at the margin. Then you can't miss. Okay? So the lab would just block out that little area in there. Now, when you want to come around the corner, we have to, again, always look along the wall when you're coming around the corner. So I'm in a very different position now, aren't I? So now I'm looking along the wall here. Choose your taper. Choose your gingival position, and then make sure you stop when the end of the burr gets to the surface. Gets to the margin. Then you know you have the perfect half-millimeter chamfer all the way along there. You can look that way when you go all the way through the contact. Except for, you're also going to look from the lingual. When you're doing the lingual, you're going to look this direction. All the way through here like this. Okay? When you're doing the lingual into the embrasures, that is.
If you notice, I have a lot of inconsistency, like the surface is never smooth when I'm preparing.
Well, you're changing your taper a lot from place to place. And if you're always looking along the wall, you always know you have the same taper. Keep the end of the burr at the margin. Always know you have the same chamfer. And then, you know, look a lot when you come into a corner. Try to look around the wall this way, and so you always see the taper and the chamfer. Once you start to get leaning outward like you did in some of these places, that's what made it really irregular. Okay? So see if you can smooth out that facial and start on the lingual a little bit. Okay? All right. Okay. Okay. So taper on the facial is going to be a problem. So we want to look along the arch and then take the taper from the middle third here. Okay, so you see the way you're leaning outward?
Yeah.
Instead of leaning the burr parallel to the middle third here, you're leaning the burr outward. So this would have been a better taper. The same way we choose the taper for the PFM that we were working on yesterday. Now lingually, yeah, your taper here is pretty good. I don't know why you did this. You have two planes on the lingual. Just one is all you need. And then you'll make a little bevel up here. Now, when you want to do into the proximal area from the lingual, we turn the patient like this and look from the lingual. Then we can come around the corner and come all the way through. The 877 burr, of course, is designed for doing this, or you can do the same thing on the distal side. Don't let the margins rise up away from the gingiva like that. Keep the margin near the gingiva all the time. And then when we're looking from the facial, coming into the facial embrasure, look this way. So you see the taper and the chamfer here. Again, we're always looking along the wall. So you always know exactly what you're doing. And don't lean the burr away from the axis, lean the burr toward the axis when you come around these corners. But again, I'm looking so I can see exactly what I'm doing at each part of the wall. That's the key thing, okay? All right, so let's see if you can figure that out a little bit more. Yeah, with the B plane so horizontal, that's basically where your A plane went. So you had an A plane there for a while, then when you did the axis reduction, the A plane disappeared, but it disappeared mostly because your B plane was too horizontal. Should have had a vertical angle about like this. Then you still have a little bit of A plane there. Okay, but we're not going to worry about that too much now. See if you can get the axis reduction a little bit better. Okay? Okay. So we could use this burr either for the facial, we're going to definitely use this in the proximal, but we could use it for the facial angle if we wanted to as well. It's okay. But, so your taper on the facial is pretty good. The chamfer here, it's a little heavy.
Heavy?
Yeah, a little bit. We could have, so there's a couple areas where it's a little heavy, a couple areas where it's a little bit lighter. Just make sure you see the end of the burr at the margin all the time. So choose your taper and make sure you see the end of the burr right at the surface of the tooth. Now over here you don't have a chamfer yet. So your taper is pretty good. So at that taper, just reduce until you get a chamfer at the bottom. Looking along the wall, you see exactly what's going on. Get farther gingivally. Make sure the end of the burr stays at the margin. We're going to look this direction. When you come into the lingual embrasure, we're going to turn completely a different position and look this direction.
Okay.
When we come into the facial embrasure. Okay, because we've always got to be looking along the wall. So wherever we are, we've got to be looking along the wall. So it's a different position for each part of the prep. Okay, but you're coming along all right. It's not too far off.
Yeah?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It'll be more than 10 years for me.
There you go. Okay, oops. Patient's trying to escape. What are you doing to him?
Not very happy.
Patient says, I want out of here. And they don't even have to pay for this.
Exactly.
All right, so, all right. Your chamfers are a little bit irregular, but not too bad. A little weaker over here, a little weaker over here. On the proximal and the distal, you're having some trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and
Especially distal lingual.
yeah, but why are you having trouble there?
I'm not able to see the margins properly.
Well, then don't do the prep. So we want to see the distal lingual? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's shift around this way. From the lingual side, we'll just look this way. Now we might want to shift the handpiece outside the arch so that we can choose our taper a little bit better, but see, you're too far from the gingiva. That's the whole problem. Get the margin very close to the gingiva, and that gives you more room. Then you can keep the end of the burr at the margin and you'll have a nice chamfer. Same thing over here. So you have a ski jump over here.
Yeah.
But again, look this way. Make sure the end of the burr is always at the margin and go gingivally as far as you need to. And then from the facial side, you're going to look this way. And again, keep the margin near the gingiva and it's easy. As soon as you let the margin get away from the gingiva, that's what gets you in trouble. Okay. And then of course, beveling the lingual cusp, bring the bevel all the way over to the marginal ridge. Actually, the A-plane here, we're going to finish the A-plane around the corner at a 45-degree angle, all the way down to the marginal ridge where it joins the bevel on the lingual cusp. Okay. And then check your jaw, facial lingually, mesial distally, and then between the corners. And see what you think. There's a couple of little jaw issues on there. See if you can find them. Yeah, between the corners. Check that a little more carefully. Okay. All right. So we're working on 3. Okay, so we need a little more clearance in a couple places. So you don't have very much clearance right here yet. See that? And that's because the ridge is in the wrong position. So let's shift that ridge, and instead of pointing the burr this way, let's point the ridge this direction. Again, so pay very careful attention to the direction of these ridges, and then bring the end of the burr out that facial groove a little bit more clearly. We're trying to make flat planes, and then all the way down here, right next to the adjacent tooth. Okay, so now the clearance is a little more obvious, but you still need more over here. So make sure you don't go on to the next part until you finish the first part, so you know you're done. Okay, so you got some ripples here, right? Up and down and up and down. So when we do the B plane, all we have to do is look this direction, and then just cut straight through from the marginal ridge here. Just cut straight. And making a flat plane, not horizontal, but flat. All the way through there, and you'll use the indirect method to check the clearance in that area. Okay, so your distal pit's pretty much in the right place. I would have moved it a little bit more distally. And then do the other side over here, so make sure you get this area taken care of. And then you're pointing the burr in pretty much the right direction here. Make sure you keep it pointing the same direction all the way around here. Don't do this part this way. Point the burr always the same direction all the way around. And then just finish it around the corner here. Okay, so that basic anatomy is pretty close. You just have to check your clearances on the functional cusp with the indirectly, and you'll be good. Okay, then you can do the axial reduction. Nice. Okay. Notice how much I tilt the patient back, so I'm looking down the axis. It's pretty easy. Okay, doing a little damage on the adjacent tooth, huh? Okay, well, let's take a look here. So the clearance, you need to do a little bit more over here, but you're pretty close. Let's tighten things up a little bit here, though. Okay, so you got the right idea. You're making some reasonably flat planes. You got the ridges in about the right position and going about the right direction. But when you come down here, just stop right on the marginal ridge. Don't keep going.
Okay.
Some of that damage was done before, though. You had an old tooth that you didn't have an intact tooth. Some of the damage I can see is below the level where you were cutting on this prep.
Okay.
So it's not all done this time, but make sure you have an intact adjacent teeth. Okay, and then so your vertical angle here is close. Make sure you reduce the same amount all the way across. And then you're going to check it, and go all the way through the oblique ridge, and then check it with the bite registration material.
Yeah.
Okay, so you almost got a nice fit here. You got about the right location for it. So just bring it up this way. Make sure you flip it over and bring it up this way too. Now the key is point the burr this way when you're doing the C plane. Your C plane is really horizontal. Point the burr this way and keep it pointing that way, and it's never going to be the wrong angle. It'll always be the perfect angle. Keep it pointing diagonally all the way around from here into the groove, and then all the way around here, back here into the groove, and then all the way around here. Then you'll be okay. And you can blend it together along here. But that looks pretty good.
Okay.
Now check with the bite registration material. I think your B plane might be a little under reduced, so you might have to go over that a little bit more.
I'll do that now.
Okay.
Thank you.
But not bad. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you done?
Okay, so you're starting your facial reduction now. That's cool. So let's check your occlusion. So you don't have enough clearance here, obviously, right? Look over at the monitor. So you don't have enough clearance here at all. Nor do you have enough clearance over here. We want a good millimeter. And this ridge is pointing in a strange direction. So take your time on these. Make sure you get the anatomy the way you want. Make sure you got the ridge defined well. Make sure it's positioned exactly over the opposing groove. And then make sure you get the clearance that you need. Flat planes. Make sure you come all the way down to the marginal ridge. Get as close as you can to the adjacent tooth. That's going to help. Okay, we still need more clearance, especially on the distal buccal. So yeah, take your time. Make sure you're really happy with this, and check your clearances. Measure those clearances. Still need some more clearance right there. You're only about 0.6 or 7 right now. So let's get some more. Okay, now you don't have a flat plane here. See that?
Yeah.
So we're going to look this way. By direct vision, your angle is pretty good, but you didn't make a flat plane. But you've got to have the marginal ridge reduced first. You got to make sure when you do the A plane, make sure you reduce the mesial marginal ridge. Then when you come through here, just push it straight away from your eye and go right through the oblique ridge. Then we get a nice flat plane, and then it's going to be easier to get clearance there. Okay, your distal pitch in a reasonable location. Bring the groove up diagonally, and don't forget to do the other side of that groove too. So notice I flipped the handpiece over to do the other side of the groove. Now when you do the C plane, all you have to do is point the burr this way. But you were pointing it this way.
Oh.
So point it diagonally so it's following this distal angle groove. Then make the groove there, and then keep it pointing the same way all the way around here. That's how you get the right vertical angle. That's how it fits the opposing tooth the best. From here to here, and then here, and all the way around here. Keep the burr pointing diagonally. Just change it when you're coming around this corner. Okay, but otherwise, you're pretty close. Now, again, check it with the indirect method when you're doing the facial reduction. So your taper is pretty good, but go in until the end of the burr gets to the margin. You want to make sure you have a nice little chamfer at the bottom.
There is a ditch over here.
A ditch where?
On the buckle.
In mid buckle?
Yeah. How
You mean right here?
is that coming? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You just went a little deeper right there, but
Maybe my burr.
that's the only place where the chamfer is the right size.
Yeah.
Okay. Every place else, make it deeper, and then your little ditch is going to disappear.
Yeah.
So choose your taper and reduce at that taper until you get the chamfer that you want. You get the chamfer that you want when the end of the burr is at the margin.
Okay.
So just reduce until the end of the burr gets to the surface of the tooth or the margin, then you have a nice little chamfer. Look this way
Distally?
when you're coming around into these embrasures, and use the mirror when you're coming around the lingual side into the embrasures. Okay? Right, cool. Okay. Okay, so let's see how this fits the opposing tooth. Probably got a little more clearance than you needed, huh? So you got definitely more than 1 millimeter in most places. Now if you'd been a little more vertical, and then cut down to the marginal ridge a little bit more. Really cut all the way to the marginal ridge, right up against the adjacent tooth. But if you'd been a little more vertical, you probably could have gotten the clearance. See how horizontal you are here? Make it much more vertical. Keep the center groove more in the middle. You could have gotten more clearance without having to reduce the cusp. so much. Yeah, so you've got a lot of reduction out here that you didn't really need to do to get the clearance. So watch the vertical angle. Okay, now that we've reduced the mesial marginal ridge, you can start there when you're doing the B-plane. Start right here. And then cut away from your eye, straight through, all the way through the oblique ridge. You want to make a really long, flat plane all the way through the oblique ridge. Then later on you'll check with the indirect methods to see if you have enough clearance there. But we're off to a start. You might have to do another 0.5 millimeter reduction. Okay, let's get a more definite pit right here. And a more definite groove going diagonally. And then the other side of that groove from the pit coming up diagonally. Okay, so that's how we get the groove starting in the right direction. Now you almost got the right direction here. Pretty close. And as long as you keep the burr pointing that same direction all the way around here, you're good. So, not too bad in that area, but again, you're going to refine it using the bite registration material to tell you that you have enough clearance everywhere. Finishing around the corner this way. But basically, it's looking pretty reasonable right now. Check the clearance, and then you can start on your axis reduction. Okay? Okay.
I had difficulty doing the palatal cut.
Okay, well, yeah, you started out with a little bit of a problem because when you did the A-plane, you had the burr too horizontal. So that makes things a little more difficult. So you're pretty horizontal here. See how horizontal you are right here instead of having the burr like that? That's where you're having trouble getting the central groove. When you get too horizontal, the central groove gets shifted, and then everything sort of gets pushed toward the lingual, and then it gets really confusing.
So try to push the central groove towards the.
You tried to push it toward the lingual? That probably wasn't the best choice.
Not towards the lingual, but towards.
Okay, well, just try to get more vertical angulation. Okay. I would have put the central groove about right here. And I could have gotten plenty of clearance on this cusp without having to reduce the cusp much at all. So this is the vertical angle that we would use. And this is the direction that we would use and the position of that ridge. So we'd be able to get plenty of clearance there without having to reduce out here. So sometimes when we're not doing a full crown, if we're doing a partial crown, an onlay or anything like that, we're going to be very careful about how much we reduce the facial cusp, if at all. So then we make sure we're very careful about the vertical angle of what we do reduce. So now you notice I'm getting a nice central groove here. So I can use that central groove when I do the B plane, then things get more organized, but you're way over reduced on your B plane. You should have been about like this. So if I put the burr in the central groove here that I made with the A plane, but look how much you've over reduced from here to here. So normally we would start right about here and then cut from the marginal ridges straight through the oblique ridge. But we could have easily been reduced a millimeter less in that area. Okay, so that direct vision is really helpful in that particular area, but you've got to get the center groove under control with the A plane first. And you've got to reduce the marginal ridges right down next to the adjacent teeth with the A plane first. Okay? Now you see your distal pit? Should be way over here. Okay, so look down the axis again and find the pit and bring the burr up this way. So get that distolingual groove going in the right direction. Then flip it over and do the other side of that groove from the pit up this way. Okay, so now we're getting the anatomy a little bit more like what we want. Then we're going to point the burr this direction, the same direction, and make a really nice groove right here. Make it obvious. And then keep the burr pointing that direction all the way around here, and the vertical angle will always be perfect. You don't even have to think about it. It's always perfect as long as you're pointing the burr in the right direction. From here, around into the groove, and then up to here. Finish it around the corner this way. That's about all you have to do. It's too bad you had such a damaged adjacent tooth there, huh? When you do the proximal, you won't know whether you damaged it now or before, right? So that's why we always make sure we change the adjacent teeth. Okay, so anyway, you have obviously tons of clearance on the functional cusp, but now the A plane is looking a little bit better. But again, the vertical angle, that's what you really need to pay some attention to. And now you can start doing the axe reduction, just like you did on the lower one. Now on the lower one here, you got some pretty heavy chamfers in different places, huh? And of course, you left a sharp ridge. Remember how much we talked about that ridge? Okay. So see if you,
How's the margin for the lower one?
well, the heavy, you got a lot of heavy chamfers. So your taper mesial facial lingually is okay. The chamfer on the mesial is not too bad. On the distal, you're trying to do it without going gingerly. So look how much damage you did on the adjacent tooth. That's because you didn't go far enough gingerly.
No, actually I was trying to remove these skis.
Remove what?
Jump skis.
Ski jump? Okay. Yeah, but the only reason you have a ski jump is because you didn't go far enough gingerly. You never would have had a ski jump if you kept the margin near the gingiva, and then you never would have hit the adjacent tooth. But you see, you're trying to put the margin almost in the contact. That's why you have a big hole in the adjacent tooth. So when you're doing it, look this way. When you're working from the lingual, look this way when you're working from the buccal, and then you can control exactly where the gingival margin is. Then it's easy. Okay? All right. Yeah, I'll go this way.
I think I got the vertical angle wrong. I reduced a lot of the curve.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit funny what's happening over here on the C plane, but we'll get there. So you got more clearance than you need on the A plane. The basic position, the vertical angle's not too far off, but the basic position's okay. But you didn't stop. You just kept going. Now, you know, it is fun cutting these teeth, so it's really tempting to keep going, but, you know, you might want to check your clearance before you have enough. Okay? Now your B plane, your angle's a little bit vertical.
Okay.
So take the angle from the adjacent tooth, start on the mesial marginal ridge, and just push it straight through. But we really want to match the angle to the other teeth as much as you can. Then we'll check this way. Your distal pit could be a little deeper, but the location's not too bad. And then don't forget to do the other side from the pit up this way. That makes the oblique ridge continue. Then when you're doing the C plane, just point the burr like this. You're not going to use the end of the burr, just the side of the burr. And make a nice groove right there. But see, you had the burr pointing facial lingually here. And over here you had it pointing facial lingually, and it was way too horizontal. Just point it diagonally, and keep it pointing diagonally all the time. And the vertical angle is automatically self-adjusting. It always comes out perfect. Point the burr in the right direction, keep going around there. Okay, and so, yeah, it looks like you probably got, you might need to get a little more clearance on the B plane right in here, but, you know, you can check that with indirect methods, but you're off to a good start. Okay, so when you do the face reduction, your taper looks like it's pretty good, but you're not quite getting a chamfer yet. It's a little hint of a chamfer. But, you know, once you choose your taper, just, I would probably taper a little bit more too. You're close though. But, you know, reduce wherever you're working until you see the end of the burr right at the margin. When it gets to the margin, then you can move on to the next place. Then you'll get a little more uniform chamfer along these walls, but you weren't too bad. But then come around here, and then again, when you come around these corners, look this way.
Okay.
Okay? When you're working from the lingual, look this way. Okay? But that step you made right there is going to disappear as soon as you do the axe reduction. Right? Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I was expecting you to put the distal pit in exactly the right place, but you got it kind of wobbling around a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's see. But let's check the clearance. Well, you don't have enough clearance.
Yeah, and distal side
Right here.
is less.
The mesial side's fine. So why didn't you do more here? You can make it a little more vertical. Change the direction of the ridge a little bit. There we go.
Yeah.
And that's all it took. Okay, now in your B plane, you're pretty close to having the right amount of clearance, but you'll check it indirectly. So there's the angle you want. So your vertical angle is pretty good. But I got a little different central groove now, because I made your A plane a little bit more vertical. Okay, but the distal pit should be here.
Yeah.
So you have a buccolingual groove instead of a distalingual groove. So your distal pit is pretty much on top of the oblique ridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to shift it.
Yeah, so look this way so you know where you're putting the pit. So the pit's the key thing to start with. Get that pit, bring the groove this direction. If you're looking down the axis in the mirror, it's easy to see what you're doing. And then put the pit right here, bring the groove up this direction. When you make the C plane, don't point the burr this way, exactly the opposite. Point it following the same direction. And make the groove there, and then bring it all the way around like this. And then follow around the corner like this. Okay, then you can blend it together from the C plane down here. Okay, but again, all you have to do is see that you're pointing the burr in the right direction, and you're guaranteed to have a good result on the C plane. All right, so you can do some axis reduction on that one. We already looked at this one over here. So you're coming along. Cool. Okay. All right, we want to reduce the distal marginal ridge more.
Okay.
If you try to preserve the marginal ridges, it really makes the occlusal anatomy complicated. People get confused all the time about that. So yeah, you're not too bad. You got plenty of clearance here, more than you need. This is okay. But you have a ridge going in a really strange direction here. Why don't you go ahead and point the ridge in the direction of the oblique ridge, but come all the way down to the marginal ridge, right next to the adjacent tooth. But get that ridge going in the right direction so it fits the opposing tooth a little better. So that's about the direction. Now the B plane, see, you have a ridge here. There's no ridge here.
I almost get confused with the lingual, with the B plane.
Okay. Well, when you do that part of it, this is the direct vision part.
Okay.
So you look this way, take the vertical angle from the adjacent tooth here, start on the marginal ridge, and just cut straight through. Cut straight through away from your eye, all the way through the oblique ridge. Just straight, all the way across. Keep going until you get through to the other side of the oblique ridge. Okay, then, so you have a nice flat plane all the way across there. Then we're going to finish doing the oblique ridge by making a pit here. You don't really have a pit here. To make the distal pit and the distal angle groove, that's the next step. This is the important part. You've got to get this pit and this groove going in the right direction and in the right location. Then you do the other side over here. Now when you do the C plane, you had the burr pointing this way. That's exactly what you don't want to do. You don't want to point it buccolingual, you want to point it diagonally.
Okay.
And make a really nice groove right there. Following this groove comes up, then it comes down. Make a really obvious groove and keep the burr pointing that way all the way around here, and you're going to be just fine. From this cusp into the groove, then all the way around here, the burr is always pointing diagonally. The vertical angle is always going to be gorgeous. It's always going to fit the opposing tooth perfectly. As long as you keep the burr pointing diagonally, you finish it around this corner, but from here into the groove, and then all the way up here, and then all the way over here, it's always pointing diagonally. Okay? Then use the bite registration material to check your clearances. Then you can go ahead and start to do some axial reduction. Don't forget to bevel the lingual cusps, and we know exactly why you need to do that. When you're doing the chamfer around these corners, you can look across the arch this way. Obviously not with this burr, but then you can see a little bit more easily exactly where the end of the burr is and how you're getting the chamfer through around those corners. But you gotta be looking along the wall wherever you are. So find the position so that you can always see exactly along those walls. All right? Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so you're getting a start on the facial lingual reduction. Not too bad. Chamfers aren't super heavy or anything like that. So now what you need to do is make sure you use the mirror wisely when you come around the corners. So you're going to come through here like this. Now you could have been, of course, much closer to the gingival level. When you come around into the proximal, you're going to make sure you go far enough gingivally so you can avoid hitting the adjacent tooth. But notice the direction I'm looking in the mirror, directly from the lingual, so I can see exactly where I am in the upper right. The upper right's the easiest quadrant to get into those embrasures. Chamfer could have been a little smaller, but when you go gingivally farther, it'll get smaller, as long as you keep the end of the burr at the margin. And then around the corners here, we can use direct vision along here like this, and around here like this. And then we'll be fine. Okay, so replace this and start on number 30.
90.
Okay, so of course I don't have to tell you about the chamfer on the facial, right?
Yeah, it's
Really heavy. It's almost like a PFM. Chamfer on the lingual's a little better. Taper on the lingual's quite a bit. Except you got two different angles. You got an angle like this and an angle like that. Just one taper on the lingual. Lean the burr toward the axis, and make sure you always see the end of the burr at the margin. Okay? Don't lean this way. Don't let the end of the burr get inside the tooth. And on the facial side, you should have had the end of the burr right here. Right at the surface of the tooth, not way inside here. So anyway, that's what we're going to pay attention to. But you came through the proximal all right. Again, with the 877 burr, that makes it pretty easy to do. And as we said before, look through here. Now you're getting a little bit of a ski jump here and a little bit of a ski jump here. So you can get your handpiece along here, and then again, just into the burr at the margin, drop gingerly, and you can get that all taken care of. Okay? All right. It's coming along, though. Okay. Okay, now that's a lot of taper. So you know how everybody gets that much taper? If you look, you could look in the mirror, and you could be looking from the lingual, and you're always going to over taper. If you're looking like this, you're always going to over taper. If you're looking like this on the facial, you're always going to over taper. That's why we never look at the wall. We always look along the wall. Okay? So this is what I mean. Look along the wall so you can see the taper, see the end of the burr at the margin, see the gingival position. Okay? And then over here, again, make sure you see the end of the burr right at the margin. You're also going to get ski jumps or weak chamfers or something like that. And then you're going to look this way, around into the mesial embrasure. And then on the upper right, it's easy to use the mirror and look this way into the lingual embrasure on this side, right? So as long as we're looking in the right direction, but the mirror makes it easy, not just possible, but easy in that area. But that's a lot of over tapering. When you start to lose your C-plane while you're doing the axis reduction, stop and figure out what's going wrong.
Okay.
All right, it's usually because you over taper. Okay, replace that and work on 30.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not getting chamfer. The tooth is getting reduced, but I'm not getting good chamfer.
Well, by good chamfer, what do you mean? You mean it's too big or too small?
Too small.
Well, let's take a look at the lingual side here. That's a big chamfer.
Lingual is big. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really heavy.
Oh.
Buckle also is pretty heavy. Yeah,
Wow.
so we can measure it with the ball burnisher. So on the buckle side, let's look down the wall together in the monitor. So you see the axe reduction here is about maybe 0.7 at the shoulder. Over here it's a full millimeter. Okay, we just want
How much should we
0.5,
put the
just the same as the burr, just 0.5. So for example, if I'm turning this way, again, we always look along the wall. You can't do it any other way. Look along the wall and see, make sure the end of the burr is always at the margin. You make sure the end of the burr is always right there at the margin. Right at the surface of the tooth, and go gingerly as far as you need to get through the proximal contact. Let's see, there's the chamfer.
okay.
So if I measure that with the ball burnisher, it's about 0.5, maybe a little bit less, but that's the size chamfer that we're looking for. And you can do it this way too, but make sure you lean the burr toward the axis. But you've got to see the end of the burr at the margin, wherever you are. You've got to see the taper and the end of the burr at the margin and the general position of the margin. When we're doing the lingual, the direct lingual, we can look this way and then make sure the end of the burr is right there at the surface. So lean the burr a little bit toward the axis, keep the end of the burr right there at the surface of the tooth, and it'll be a perfect 1/2 millimeter chamfer every time. Okay, so that's how we get it. But it was interesting that you thought it was too small when it was actually too big. Right? And then come around the corner this way. And then this way over here. Again, I'm always looking however I need to so I can see exactly what I'm doing in each part of each prep. Okay, so now we got the chamfer coming around the corner a little bit more. Then all you'd have to do is go through and with the 877 burr and connect those together and you'd be set. Okay, but let's go ahead and start on 30 for the afternoon work. So replace 3 and then do 30. Occlusal reduction and axis reduction.
Can I use the chamfer? Can I use this one burr?
Okay, that'll give you a chamfer that's about 0.25 instead of 0.5.
Oh, okay.
Now you can use it twice. You could go through once and then raise it up and go through again. Okay, so you can use a burr to make a bigger chamfer than the burr is designed to make, but you have to do it with 2 passes.
Yeah.
Okay? So you can use an 877 to make a 1 millimeter shoulder as long as you make a 1 millimeter chamfer. Just make a 1/2 millimeter chamfer, raise the burr occlusally, and then move the wall in until you get a 1 millimeter chamfer. Okay? Okay, and we did one of the proximal reductions over on this side. Your chamfer is a little bit weak though on this one.
Yeah.
So if the chamfer is weak, then the burr is going to be sticking outside the prep a little bit more, and it's more likely to hit the adjacent tooth. So try to keep the chamfer the full size of the burr. Again, if the end of the burr is at the margin, that's the perfect size chamfer. And use the 877 burr, and then you don't have to worry about hitting the adjacent tooth at all. But again, make sure you're looking along the wall from the facial, or I'm going to turn around this way and look from the lingual to see along that same wall from the lingual. But make sure you cut until you see the end of the burr right there at the margin. Now, to see that detail, you might have to have loops on, but that's what we learned to do. Okay? All right. Okay. No, axial reduction. So you spent all your time working on the axial reduction down here? Oh, that's right. We just talked about that, didn't we? Yeah. Okay, so this one looked pretty good. You got a little hint of a ski jump on the lingual side of the distal, though. So just make sure, see that? See right there? Yeah. So just make sure when you go through the 877, the end of the burr is always at the surface. If you get in a little bit, it's a ski jump. So make sure you see exactly where it is. Okay, so change this one, put a new one in, and then do number 30. Okay? So hopefully we'll finish the occlusal and the axial reduction. For 30, yes. By 4 o'clock.
I haven't done any axial command in the I've done one command. Should I do that command?
Well, yeah, the goal was to finish 4 preps today.
Yeah,
So
I
we're,
don't think I can finish all of them.
I don't think so either, yeah.
I can try doing 3 at least.
I want to have you do, for maxillary, I want to have you do the upper left. That's more difficult.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do 30. And then do, for the rest of the afternoon, you're going to do 14. Okay, that'll challenge you. Okay. If you do 14, you can do 3 easy.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so this guy. All right. So you're coming through the proximal. It looks like you're making a little bit of a ski jump there. So it'd be nice to make sure you see the end of the burr exactly at the margin, exactly at the surface. And then from the lingual, as long as you've done the lingual reduction, which you haven't quite done yet, but if you want to come around the corner this way, it's pretty easy to use the mirror and look from the lingual right through there, and you can see everything you need to. Now we have no ski jump, and we have a fairly uniform chamfer around there. Okay? So you can do the same thing over here, but we're not going to do that yet. We're going to go ahead and replace this, and then we'll work on number 30. And this one, you didn't quite get through the proximal on the distal side. So, then you look this direction. And we can work from the facial pretty easily, huh? And then we're going to turn this direction. And work from the lingual pretty easily. But again, just lean the burr toward the axis, keep the end of the burr at the margin, keep the margin near the gingiva all the time, not up here. If you keep it down here, you can just walk it right on through. So see how much easier that was? But in each one of these, you got to be looking exactly the right direction. The right direction is always along the wall. Okay. All right, so replace 3 and work on 30. Try to see if we can get that done and evaluated by 4 o'clock or so. Okay. Okay, so your chamfer is kind of weak here on the mesial, and also weak on the distal. So when the chamfer is weak, it means that not much of the burr is in your prep. Most of the burr is outside the prep. The other thing that's outside the prep is the adjacent tooth.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you make a weak chamfer, you're more likely to hit the adjacent tooth.
And the taper is not.
Yeah, and you got a little bit over tapered because you were worried about hitting the adjacent tooth. But you could have made it more vertical and made the chamfer stronger and gone deeper gingivally, and that would have been a much easier way to get through there. So again, make sure you see the end of the burr at the margin, and you can look from the facial, and you can also look from the lingual, and see exactly what you're doing when you come around here. You can look from the lingual over here on the distal side. The mirror makes it really easy. And then you can look this way as well. Okay, so you can look along both of those walls very easily. And prep from both the lingual and the buccal. Okay, so let's see here. Again, don't forget to bevel that lingual ridge. We know how important that is now, don't we? We talked all about that. And before you finish, you're going to finish the A-plane. Never really got done all that great. But the A-plane, when you finish the proximal reduction, the A-plane comes around the corner of the 45-degree angle where it joins the lingual bevel right on the marginal edge. That's how we get everything nice and smooth. Okay, so otherwise, your chamfer's got a little trouble over here. Weak over here, though, huh? So again, when you're working from the lingual and doing the proximal reduction here, you can look through this way. So there's a little bit of a ski jump right on the mesial lingual. So look in the monitor so you can see exactly. Yep. And then I'm going to come around here. I'm going to have to turn the typing on a bit. It's a little too close to the table sometimes. Now I'm just going to walk it right around the corner more vertically, a little more gingerly, and definitely more of a chamfer. And now it comes through just fine. Okay, even with this burr, now the 877 is going to be even easier, won't it? Okay.
To get more of a chamfer, we need to be more vertical in the angulation and go deeper.
Well, you can get any size chamfer you want at any taper. But, you know, you're over tapering because you're afraid to hit the adjacent tooth. What you should be doing is keeping it more vertical and making more chamfer. So the whole burr moves away from the adjacent tooth. Okay? Okay. That would be better.
Try that for 30.
All right, cool. Just looking at your central.
Yeah, I need to complete it.
Yeah, but look at it right now.
It has undercut on the
Well, that's not the most important thing. You're right, but the most important thing is those margins.
Yeah.
Ski jumps, horizontal shoulders. Yeah, we don't want that. Now we're going to need to work on taper a little bit more on this one. Your chamfers are close. There's a ski jump on the mesial and might be on the distal too. So, you know, end of the burr, back at the margin, drop the margins gingerly, but taper. We're going to have to be a little more careful. So let's look at the middle third of the adjacent tooth, right? There's the taper we want, right?
Yeah.
That's not what you did. You leaned outward. So if you have a nice little 1/2 millimeter chamfer here, you're under reduced up here.
Okay.
Okay? And there might be an undercut too, but make sure you get the taper all the way to the chamfer. You do the secondary plane like this. So you're about half a millimeter or so under reduced on the distal side there. So the taper will usually give a bulge that's under reduced, and the lab may or may not be able to deal with that. And then again, just make sure you see the end of the burr at the margin all the time. Look from the lingual, look from the facial. So you can look from the facial and come around that corner and lean inward, and you can use the mirror and come around that whole side and around that corner to that whole side as well. And then you'll have a nice uniform chamfer. Yeah. So look from the lingual, look from the facial. You can prep from both directions, and that always gives you the best result. Okay, and we saw this one already.
Need to refine a little bit.
Okay, so not too far off. A little scary in a couple of places for the chamfer out here. It might feel like a little ski jump, so check it with the ball burnisher. Make sure it's not. And then let's get 3 changed and start on 30. Okay. Okay. Okay, now that's a heavy chamfer. Okay, it's really a heavy shoulder. And you got a lot of taper over here. Okay, so slow down a little bit. And when you're doing the lingual, you can look along the arch like this, take the taper from the middle of the adjacent tooth, but keep the end of the burr right there at the margin. Right at the margin. All the time. Okay?
Okay.
There's a taper, there's a chamfer. So look that way and you can control that. Now the facial, the taper is better, but you're cutting way too far into the tooth, right? Now you went a little bit subgingival, so it was harder for you to see where the margin was when you're prepping on it. But this is where the end of the burr should have been, right here. Not way inside there. So those are things you have to really make sure you see. And of course there's a big ski jump over here. So you can look from the facial and come around here, but again, make sure the end of the burr is at the margin, or you get a ski jump. And you can look from the lingual and come back through that same area. We're always looking along the wall, always seeing where we are gingivally, always seeing the end of the burr at the margin. That's how we get things totally under control. Your meso side wasn't as bad, but you're leaning still a little bit away from the axis there. Make sure you get some decent taper. Okay, and again, with all the discussion we had, don't forget to bevel the lingual cusp bridge. So we know the consequences of not beveling it, right?
I can bevel with this burr.
You can bevel with virtually any burr that's ever been made by man. Okay. But you know, you're so desperate to bevel it, you know, you'd bevel it with your fingernails if you had to. Okay, so your chamfer's much better here. Okay, so what happened up here?
I have problem with the upper teeth. Yeah, upper teeth.
Oh, okay.
In class 2 and also in crown.
Is that because you're not comfortable using the mirror?
Maybe.
Okay, well, the mirror is your best buddy.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
gonna be.
don't forget that. It's your best buddy. But you still have to see the same thing. You got to be looking along the walls, so you see the taper and see the axial reduction while you're doing it. And you can control it as long as you're looking in the right direction.
Okay.
Okay. Now this is interesting. See, you almost have a little groove here. But the interesting thing is when you over taper facial lingually like that. So this is, I haven't shown anybody this yet. If you over taper facial lingually, then you have to worry about the crown tipping off facially or lingually, right? So how do you keep that from happening?
Adjusting the position of the burr.
Put a groove.
A groove?
Yeah, see that groove?
Yeah.
So now the crown won't tip off facially or lingually. Because the groove, the gold in the groove locks it on.
Okay.
Okay? If you have to, you can even make 2 grooves. So here's one groove. You can make another one over here. Make sure the grooves are parallel to each other. But, you know, when you put gold in those grooves, that's what keeps the crown from dislodging by tipping off facially or lingually. So if you do over taper during the exam, put a groove in.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay? I mean, if you over taper, it fails. If you put a groove in, it passes. How long does it take to put the groove in? What, 1 second?
For sure.
So again, like I said, that the exams are mostly grading your judgment. You can make mistakes. But if you see the mistakes and you decide what to do about it and you actually have the courage to do it, that's how you pass exams.
Okay.
All right? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see how you're doing. Okay, so looking here, so your clearance on your A-plane was pretty decent actually. The A-plane could have been a little bit more vertical, and you got a little bit horizontal, but it's giving you the clearance that you want. You're not getting enough clearance on the B-plane though. So even without the wax or the registration material, I can look through there and I can see you don't have very much clearance right in that area there. So, you know, make sure you're pointing the burr in the right direction here. This direction, right to the middle, and keep the central groove more in the middle of the tooth and do those planes 1, 2, and 3. That's really important that we get those just right. So, yeah, and you notice that you have these two ridges running parallel to each other, and everything's curved instead of flat. So we're going to point the burr this direction and make a flat plane here and bring the end of the burr out that groove really nice and flat. All the way out that groove and then down here to the marginal ridge. Over here, point it this direction. Come flat out the groove and then down here to the marginal ridge. So make the anatomy a little cleaner and it's going to fit the opposing tooth a little better. Okay. So you got a lot of taper on the facial, huh? So this would have been a reasonable taper, so you're a little bit over tapered here. The lingual side's not too bad. The chamfer is okay. Here you can, again, when you come around these corners, keep the chamfer the same size. So we want to look along those walls, but over here, you want to look along the arch this way. And really choose your taper carefully. And then get the chamfer exactly what you want at that taper. Then when you come around into the proximal area, you'll have a nice uniform chamfer that you can bring around the corner and just blend it in here. Be careful about the taper. Lean the burr toward the axis when you come into this area. And switch to the 877 burr really soon here, okay? So then you can get through there more easily. And when you're coming around the corners from the lingual, make sure you're looking across the arch this way, kind of upside down, looking across the arch. Then you can come around into these embrasures this way. So each of the 4 quadrants is significantly different in terms of how you look along the walls, but you have to figure that out for each quadrant individually. Okay, so this one we already looked at a bit, so, alright. So again, practice your proximal reductions there, and see how it goes. Okay. Okay, it looked like your burr was too horizontal right there. Okay, so you're doing the A-plane reduction, but it's almost exactly horizontal. Got a mirror?
Yes.
Okay, can't do this without the mirror. Okay, so yeah, you're pretty horizontal. Make it more vertical. Make it match the opposing tooth angles better. It's definitely more horizontal than the opposing tooth, and this groove got shifted way over here. It should be here, right? See, here's the opposing cusp. That's where you want to put the groove, right there.
Just move it away.
See, that's where I want the groove. And then make the grooves really definite and make the cusps rounded. You're making rounded grooves and sharp cusps. But get the right vertical angle too. But from this groove all the way around into this groove and then up to here. But see, now we're starting to fit the opposing tooth. See over there? Yeah. But really make sure you get those grooves exactly where you want them. Then you'll be ready to do the B plane like that, and it'll fit together a lot better. Okay, see how much over tapering you did down here?
Yes.
Okay, so you know why that was, right? You know why that happened?
I didn't position the burr right.
But why didn't you position it?
Because I didn't see it from the right angle.
Okay, what is the right angle?
Along the wall.
Right. So yeah, if you look at the wall, you're going to over taper. Look along the wall and we can control the taper perfectly. Okay? Important lesson.
Yeah.
We're going to do so many of these next week. You're going to be really dialed in. Yep. One day next week we're going to do at least 3 bridges. And they're all doing all these different kinds of preps. Okay. So let's see. So your clearance isn't too bad. Now you're using an unusual burr. Do you know what burr you're using?
The proximal
chamfer?
Well, a lot of people use this for the proximal chamfer. I find that the 877 is a lot easier to use. That's the little straight one.
Okay.
Yeah, so this one makes a 0.25 chamfer. It makes a very weak chamfer. So in order to make a full-size chamfer with this, I'll show you what you have to do. So you can come along and make keep the end of the burr at the margin. This is the way chamfer burrs are always used. You keep the end of the burr at the margin. And then you get a little tiny chamfer. When you want to make it bigger, you raise the burr and you move the wall in farther. Like we're doing an all-ceramic crown with a burr that makes a 1/2 millimeter chamfer. Then you can get a 1/2 millimeter chamfer with this burr, but it's, this takes extra work and extra skill. The 877, just walk it through, you're done. Okay, but for the occlusal, of course, we're going to use a different burr completely. Now your A-plane looks very horizontal in some of these areas, so this would have been a better angle. Okay. So your A-plane, you have reasonable clearance, but the angle would be better if it were more like this. And also your B-plane, so you didn't have an A-plane over here. But then you got this groove, which is totally horizontal, and your B-plane's really horizontal. So when your B-plane gets horizontal like this, it pushes the central groove lingually.
Okay.
So your central groove is way over on the lingual side, and then you made a super steep plane here.
Yeah.
You're never going to get clearance on those cusps if you're so vertical. Okay? So again, watch those vertical angles, but we're certainly going to be looking carefully at the clearances in each of those areas. And that's going to help guide us. If we don't have enough clearance, then you know what we need to do. Okay, now when we do the axial reduction, of course you're not going to use this burr for the facial lingual reduction, but your chamfer is actually pretty heavy there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So your chamfer is almost 1 millimeter here. It's better over here. Of course, make sure the ball burnisher slides right off so you know you don't have any ski jumps, and I would taper more on the lingual side. So let's go to a burr that's designed to make the chamfer better.
When I use this burr, the chamfer is getting so heavy.
Yeah, but when you use any chamfer burr that you use, you keep the end of the burr at the margin.
Yeah.
So you're getting a heavy chamfer not because you're using the wrong burr, but because you're using it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Okay? You're just not seeing where the end of the burr
When I
is.
put it at the margin, it's going gingerly, like a cycle.
Well, but all you have to do is look this way, and you can see exactly what you're doing. As long as you're looking along the wall. This is not a matter of guessing. You can see precisely what you're doing every step of the way because we're looking the right direction. Then you're going to get a nice little chamfer. Now you're over tapered here, but you don't have a chamfer at the bottom, and you went way down subgingival, didn't you? So look this way so you know what you're doing.
The burr should be along the long axis of the tooth, or it should be...
Well, slightly tapered toward the long axis.
Okay.
Just get a little bit of taper, that's all you really need to do. And then when you come around here, again, just make sure you see the end of the burr at the margin. Make sure you see the margin a little bit above the gingiva. Now over here you're going to use the 877, and you can come around here and go through there a little bit more easily. Now, of course, you got some... Now let's take a look here. Okay. And over on this one, you're leaning the burr a little bit away from the axis. So here's the axis, so lean the burr toward the axis. Not away from the axis, toward the axis. And then just reduce until you see the end of the burr get to the surface, and then stop reducing. Then you're always going to get the perfect size chamfer, but you got to get the taper first. Once you have the taper the way you want, then reduce until you see the end of the burr get to the margin. Then you got a nice chamfer. Okay? Then you can come around here. Again, stay a little bit above the gingiva. When you go through the proximal, you're going to go gingivally as much as you need to, but you don't need to go subgingival ever. And watch the taper. Make sure you always see that the burr is leaning toward the axis. Okay?
Yep.
And again, point the burr this direction when you're doing this plane, and find the central groove, and then central fossa, come out the facial groove, something like this, come down this way, Come down this way. So do plane 1 coming out the facial groove here, plane 2 down to the distal facial groove here, plane 3 down the distal cusp. So this is how we do that whole distal buccal side of the occlusal. And that'll make it easiest to get clearance, okay? So when you're doing the
Distal buccal
occlusal,
cusp should be made flat or
the distal buccal cusp, well, there's a distal cusp here.
yeah, distal cusp.
You're just going to reduce this one plane down here. So plane 1, plane 2 to the distal buccal groove, and then plane 3 down the distal cusp. And so the rest of it's going to be removed when you do the axial reduction. But those 3 planes are important to get everything fitting together. Okay, so watch your vertical angles and watch your directions a little bit better. We'll get close. All right, and again, we're going to do so many next week. Okay. Okay, I don't see an A-plane. That always makes me suspicious. So normally there's going to be an A-plane like this, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's no A-plane, so you've got some clearance, but you don't have the groove where it should be. Well, I see a little bit of an A-plane in here and in here, just a bit. But we really want to get those grooves exactly where they should be. So maybe here. So the key is those grooves, right? We always start with the grooves. And make sure they're exactly where the opposing cusps are. You don't have a groove over here. So this is where how your A-plane is going to be done. But the key is those grooves. They have to get in exactly the right position so the opposing cusps fit right into them. Okay, so you got more clearance than you need now, but still, I want to get the anatomy sorted out. Okay, so yeah, this ridge should be pointing this way. And then you're going to bring the facial groove out about here, and then come down this way. Plane 1, plane 2, plane 3. This ridge is going to be shifted more to the mesial side, so down here. So because you didn't quite get the grooves on the A-plane in the right position, it kind of threw off your B-plane. That threw off your C-plane. These 2 ridges come together in a V shape about 1/4 of the way across the surface. Don't forget to come down from the ridge and bring the end of the burr out the groove. Flat plane from the ridge down and out the groove. Flat plane over here. Okay, so a little more attention on how we do the occlusal reduction. Okay, so your chamfer is close. You got a couple areas that are sort of almost ski jumps, and you got some areas where the chamfer is really weak. Keep this chamfer uniform right around the corners into the proximal. It's going to be a lot easier, but you know, you at least have draw facial angle. Your taper on the facial is pretty close. Don't forget to check to see if you need a secondary plane. And we're going to come around the corner. We can look this way and really make a nice chamfer uniformly all the way around that corner. And then around this corner, but again, make sure you see exactly where the end of the burr is and where the margin is gingerly, a little bit too deep gingerly. And then when you want to do that area from the lingual view, then you can come around this way. So the position that you get in and the direction that you look are the key parts of whether this prep's going to come out successfully or not. Okay. And I would taper the lingual definitely more. You're leaning a little bit away from the axis, so here's the axis, lean the burr toward the axis and do it that way instead of trying to match the angle of the original tooth. That'll give you an undercut. So be very careful. Okay, but you know, you're coming along, not too far off, but again, on the occlusal, pay attention to each one of those little details and it's going to get easy. Okay? All right, sure. Okay, so you're doing 14, I think, right?
Yeah, but I wanted to show you number 3.
I can't see anything.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, okay, 3. All right. Okay.
So I feel like facially I taper too much.
Yeah, this is the taper you want, so not much too much. You probably did a little bit more on the mesial side than on the distal side, but still, we look along the arch. So we can see the taper here. Yeah, it's pretty close. And the secondary plane would be like this. You made too much taper for the secondary plane. So on the lingual, you have a nice taper. Got a little bit of a secondary plane. How's the occlusal? Okay, so you're way over reduced in most of the occlusal. You have a plane here which doesn't exist. There are A planes like this, and we take that right to the cusp ridge, and then we put a little bevel on the cusp ridge, and that's it. But maybe you just made a really big bevel or something. Not sure. Anyway, and then so you check your clearance before you have enough clearance. That's always a good idea. You can always do a little more. You can't do a little less. Don't forget to point the burr this direction when you do the C plane. You got to get that groove there. Then keep the burr pointing that direction all the way around here, and your C plane is always going to be beautiful. It's so easy to get it right if you just keep the burr pointing in the right direction. Then finish it around the corner this way. Okay, but the mesial distal reductions aren't too bad, but your chamfer got a little heavy here. So look through here and keep the end of the burr at the margin, and the chamfer will always be perfect. You can go a little bit farther gingerly there and fix that up. But mostly not too bad. But the occlusal, you're going to have to pay a little more attention to.
I'm having issues with the maxillary occlusal. Even in clip number 14, I wasn't able to do,
Yeah, well, you didn't do a C plane at all.
Yeah, I'm still.
Okay, where's the distal lingual groove? Okay, so there should be a plane here going all the way through the oblique ridge here, and then so again, the anatomy that you're doing here is way better than what you did over here.
Yeah.
This is quite confusing.
Yeah.
And
I
you see,
overdid it.
well, you also didn't match the opposing tooth. You didn't match the opposing tooth. You're not defining ridges. You're not figuring out where the pits belong. So yeah, think that through a little more.
Yeah. So when you're doing the lingual side, the palatal side.
For axe reduction?
No, for the occlusal reduction.
C plane?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you have to start by making sure you have the distal pit. Look in the monitor now. So make sure you have a distal pit and a distal lingual groove going that way. That's the anatomy of the tooth. Distal pit, distal lingual groove, and then point the burr the same direction. Here, and make that groove, and then keep it the same direction all the way around here. That's how you get the C plane done perfectly every time.
what about actually B plane? Like after completing the
Well, look how much you over-reduced. All this is totally over-reduced through here. Okay? And so this is much more of the anatomy that we're looking for, but anyway, you can look at my example and see how it works.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
Can I do it again to occlusal?
Yeah, whatever you want to do basically between now and 5:20.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
All right. And make sure you save a little time to make sure you've got some teeth replaced that you need to, so be ready for that.
Taper is too much, I think. And the A plane.
On 30?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you got clearance on the A plane mostly. And then B plane, you got something going on there. You're okay. You'd have to check this with the indirectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course this ridge would normally be a little cleaner and the central groove would be a little more toward the middle of the tooth. So make nice flat planes and well-defined ridges. And this one comes together with it. These two ridges join together. You didn't reduce this cusp hardly at all. So make a flat plane here toward the adjacent tooth and a flat plane down here, and then bring the end of the burr out that groove. Flat plane out the groove, flat plane to the marginal ridge. Flat plane to the marginal ridge, flat plane out the groove. This ridge points this direction. So you're close, but a little bit off on that. Bring it out this way, plane 1, plane 2, plane 3. And this ridge, it doesn't look like it's got much clearance on it either. So down here, out the groove, down here to the marginal ridge. Let me just position it using the indirect methods, position it so it fits into the opposing tooth as much as possible. Okay, so your chamfer on the facial is pretty weak.
Yeah, did I tilt it too much, or because
Well, let's
I've
find
been
out.
reducing for quite a while, I still couldn't get a shampoo.
Well, of course, when we do the axe reduction, you know, the first thing is make sure you have the right taper. So let's take the taper from the middle third of the adjacent tooth. So you're a little bit over tapered. Okay. Now, if you're looking at it in this direction, when you're doing it, of course, you're always over taper. You can't avoid it. That's why we never look at it that direction. We look this direction, so now we can see the taper, and we can see the chamfer. As we get the chamfer, we can see it. If we see the end of the burr at the margin, we know we have the perfect chamfer. That's it. That's all you have to do. Look along the wall. Make sure you see where the end of the burr is. And keep changing your position so that you're seeing along the wall in each area. And of course, when you're coming around into the embrasure, you better go farther gingerly, huh? And you can switch over to the 877. Then you'll be in good shape. Now with the 877, you can just walk it right on through here. But keep the margin near the gingula all the way through the contact. Or else you're going to be hitting the adjacent tooth. Every step of the way, margin near the gingula, into the burr at the margin. I can even get this burr through, but the 877 makes it a lot easier. Alrighty?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the A-plane vertical angulation was okay.
A bit horizontal.
Okay.
Should have been better like that. And notice where the groove is. It's not fitting this ridge at all. Okay? You got the clearance, but you would have gotten it much easier with much less reduction if you had the right angle and put the grooves exactly where they belong. Okay? All right. I don't know why this, I guess I do know why this mannequin's backwards. Okay. So you're using the really tiny little chamfer burr. So you got these switched.
Yeah.
So a little tiny one gives you 1/4 of a millimeter chamfer, which is okay, but then you're going to have to make it bigger.
Yeah.
So then you have to raise the burr and cut in again, move the wall in again, which some people do. But anyway, we're going to take the taper about like this. Don't lean the burr in like this. But make sure you see the end of the burr at the margin all the time. So here's the taper. Just make sure you always have the burr, end of the burr right at the margin, and then drop the margin gingerly wherever you want it. You don't want to go subgingival, but again, I'm looking along the wall when I'm doing it, so I can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay. So over here, you're a little bit inside the tooth with the end of the burr too, right? Just make sure the end of the burr is always right at the surface of the tooth. And you really can't miss. But again, you have to be looking along the wall for every aspect of that. Now your lingual taper is okay, but the chamfer is really heavy, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is the right chamfer right there. And most of the other chamfers are too heavy.
Distal lingual, right?
Distal lingual chamfer, that's a good size. That's about 1/2 millimeter. You can measure it with a ball burnisher and you can see, how big the chamfer is.
Less than 1 mm, right?
Should be like what?
Chamfer should be less than 1 mm, right?
Well, way less. How about half of 1 mm?
1.5 mm.
0.5. So you measure it with the ball burnisher, but this burr gives you a 0.5 chamfer automatically. If the end of the burr is at the margin, you're good. Okay?
Yeah.
If you go into the tooth too far, you get a heavy chamfer, you get a ski jump. If you don't go in far enough, then you don't get enough axe reduction. So yeah, as long as the end of the spur is at the margin, you're fine. Okay, and so we were working on this one before.
The occlusal reduction on tooth number 30.
Oh yeah.
Fine.
Well, not enough clearance, and I don't see a real good groove here. Where's the groove? Right there.
This will cut.
Where'd that groove go? I want a really good groove there. That's the way we start. We make a nice groove, and then we make a nice groove a little bit more to the mesial here. With the burr leading, you know, with the right vertical angle of the burr. And then come around here into the groove, come up from the groove to groove. So now that looks a lot better, doesn't it? Okay, but get those grooves in the right place and you'll be much better off. So point this ridge a little bit more diagonally so the central groove stays a little bit more in the middle. And over here, so you want these two ridges come together in the V shape. So you have this ridge here and this ridge doesn't meet it. So you can come down this way for this ridge, and then come down this way and then this way for this ridge. So they actually come together. This is the symmetrical side of the tooth. This is the asymmetrical side. Over here the grooves don't meet. And come down to the marginal ridge a little bit more. Okay. Alright, so just have to work on some more of those details. When the chamfer gets heavy, you tend to get a ski jump. So, yeah, and you take your ball burnisher, slide it down here. If it stops, if it doesn't slide off, it's a ski jump.
Okay.
And that has to be fixed. Okay? All right.
All right, put my light here. My light here.
Okay, good.
See?
You like those loops better?
Yes, much better.
See? $135.
Let's see if my credit card likes this look as well.
Well, I can't sell it to you. I don't stock them, but I can tell you exactly where to get them, or I can get one for
yeah?
you.
But tomorrow? For tomorrow?
Oh, you can use that tomorrow for the exam.
Yes?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. All these loops are for everybody to use. Those grooves, huh? Okay, so you're working on 14.
Yeah.
Okay, so need a little more clearance, but you're pretty close. But again, get it more vertical here. This is a better angle. But here you get it too horizontal, so you didn't really need to reduce the cusp that much. So keep the vertical angle a little bit more under control when you're doing the A-plane. And make a flat plane out the groove here on both sides. Make sure you reduce down to the marginal ridges so that when you do the B-plane you can start right where you reduce the marginal ridge there. Okay, and I think when you check indirectly you'll find that you don't have enough clearance on the B-plane here. So you have to check it with the bite registration material or wax or whatever you want. Now your pit's in a pretty good location here. And the groove's going in about the right direction.
Yeah, this time I think I did correct.
Yeah. But then when you do the C-plane, continue that same direction.
Okay.
You're too much facial angle. Just point the burr in this direction.
Okay.
And make a really good groove right there. Make it really obvious. And then bring the burr that same direction. Keep the burr pointing that direction all the way around here. That's what gives you the perfect C-plane. Okay? Now, your chamfer's a little bit heavy on the facial, isn't it?
Oh my.
Yeah. So, again, when you're doing it, just keep the end of the burr right there. Not here, there.
Okay.
Okay, just make sure you see where the end of the burr is. Make sure you see it actually at the surface of the tooth or at the margin. then you can't miss. It'll always be a great chamfer. And you look along the wall wherever you're working. Just make sure you're looking along the wall so you can see where the end of the burr is. When we get over here, you can look along the wall this way. So a pretty good start there. When you come here, make sure you have the burr leaning toward the axis.
Okay.
When you come around that corner. But again, we're always looking along the wall. We might have to look in a number of different positions, a number of different directions in order to see exactly what we're doing. But now that facial side looks a lot better. When you're doing the lingual, of course, you'll look along the wall this way.
Okay.
When you come into the proximals from the lingual, that gets tricky on 14. I'm going to show you guys something on 14, doing the proximal reduction on 14 from the lingual. So I want you to look at it pretty carefully. I'm going to switch over to the 877 burr. We haven't gotten the direct lingual reduction yet, but I'm going to show you how it's necessary to come around the corner into the lingual embrasures. Okay, I'm going to clean the mirror a little bit. So on the upper left, it's a little bit tricky for right-handed people. So we're going to look over the head of the handpiece into the mirror, and then we can see right along that wall. That's the only way to see along this wall from the lingual on the upper left. That's the tricky part. It's the same thing we've been doing, but to see this direction, you have to use the mirror in a little bit of a tricky way. But now we can cut all the way along there and get a nice chamfer and all the way through the contact. Same thing over here. On the upper right, it's easier. On the upper right, see, I'm looking past the head of the handpiece. I'm not looking over the handpiece, I'm looking past the head of the handpiece so I can see the taper and the chamfer really nicely, really easily. So the upper right's easy in comparison. Upper left, I turn the patient to the right, put the mirror on the lingual, look over the head of the handpiece, and there's just a little space to look through so that I can see exactly what I need to when I come through here. Okay? So for right-handed people, the upper left working in the mirror from the lingual takes some practice. But again, once you get in the right position, doing it is the same as it is anyplace else. But you have to look over the head of the handpiece instead of past the head of the handpiece, and that makes it trickier. Okay? All right, so that's the story.
Okay.